Almost.
Hey guys, back with another one here today. James Riley, Goliath Historical Fencing Academy. Today we're looking at what you just saw was a video of a friend of the school, a student, and someone I do a lot of private coaching with, named Connor, and it was a pickup bout that he had up in Milwaukee several weeks ago. The idea was we were going to look at his bout and isolate for some deficiencies in his practice, to see what it is that we can target specifically, based on what he was doing in free play. And that's always where we're going to start when we're developing a deficiency. Once we've looked at the practice, and what I did next was I fenced Connor myself. And Connor didn't have any indication with regards to what we were going to be doing or what I was looking for specifically. He was instructed to just fence as well as he could, and what I did was I fed him stimulus that I believed I understood how he would respond to, just to make sure that it was in fact a deficiency in his practice and not something that that was sort of coincidental or incidental to that particular session in that moment. And so we fenced, and we discovered that it was something in fact that he does have a habit of doing, and we look towards developing a different movement pattern to deal with that situation, to maybe put him in a more optimal position after that. So we look at the video of his fencing, of his free play. We say, okay, that's the thing that we're going to target. And then as a coach, I fenced him myself and fed him that same stimulus just to be sure that I understood what it was that he was doing. And then from there, we take it through a rigorous process of development. And that's what this video is going to be all about today. So you're going to see us go through the whole process. Typically, this process can take anywhere from a month to 3 months, depending on the skill, depending on the level of competency that the student has in subordinate skills that are required for correct execution. And then, it could take anywhere from a month to 3 months just to get everything sharp, or to go through the whole process. We didn't do that this time because we wanted to make a video of the process. So there are several areas where there is still lots of improvement that is required to make the skill more reliable in his free play going forward. But with this as a tool, he can refer back to it and correct those deficiencies in a more systematic way. So the process of development is sort of in order. We develop the sequence of the movement pattern. We develop the rhythm of the movement pattern, so making sure that the aspects of the sequence are started and stopped at the correct space and time. And then we look for context, so choosing that movement pattern among options. And then we look for feeling, so making that movement pattern happen in rhythm according to an external tempo or rhythm that's set by the environment that we're in. In the case of fencing, the rhythm and tempo or speed of our training partner. And then finally, we increase or graduate the intensity so that we can achieve it more consistently at a wider range of intensities. So that also means slower. It doesn't just mean that we can do it faster. It means slower. It means under more complex conditions. So among several other choices. And each time we go through a step, we spend as much time as we need to in the step to where we can perform successfully according to the conditions of that step 95% of the time. If we can do something 95% of the time, then it's worth it to move forward. If we can only do something 75% of the time, then we need to continue developing the skill until we can make it more reliable at that particular level. So that might just be in sequence. That might just be doing the things in the right order. Until we can do all of the things in the right order 95% of the time, there's no point in doing it in rhythm. Also, if we find that we can't do things even 70% of the time, then, or we'll say 50, if we can't do things 50% of the time well, then we should probably break it down even further and figure out where we can do what we can do well. And, you know, which is another way of saying it's important for us to scale our training so that we're achieving success, but we're still experiencing a challenge, right? If we're just failing all the time, we might as well be flipping a coin at that point, and that's luck, right? So if it requires luck, or you have worse chances than luck, than flipping a coin to achieve a technique successfully, then you probably need to figure out what areas you need to develop. And so that's what this process is. We kind of burn through the process a little bit. So there are aspects of the technique that Connor could still use improvement on, even though we move forward. But again, he'll have this as a reference, so he'll be able to go through that. But I hope you enjoyed the video, and you'll see at the end how we tie it all together. So, hey guys, James Riley here from Goliath Historical Fencing Academy. So we've talked a little bit about how we're going to identify the deficiency in our practice that we're looking to develop, and then once we've done that, you know, once we've watched some videos of maybe our own sparring, maybe a coach does a session with the student to just feed them that stimulus a few times to see how they're responding and whether or not that's something that could use some work. We take it to the next level. And so the next level is taking the skill, once we've identified it, and putting it through a rigorous process of development that begins from the most basic level of the movement pattern, the sequence of the movement pattern, testing the quality of the movement pattern before we move on. And then from sequence, we move to rhythm, so getting the components to happen in the correct space of time, in proportion to each other. And then finally, finding the moment in the context that we're trying to apply the movement pattern, to apply that basic skill and rhythm, to put it basically in between something that comes before and after, and then amongst a set of choices. So when is it appropriate for me to do the movement pattern once I've developed it, and when is it not appropriate for me to do that movement pattern? Once I can develop the context, I can then move towards feeling. So putting it at the correct rate. So not only putting it in the correct place, but putting it at the correct rate according to the movement of my training partner, how fast they're moving. If my training partner is moving very slow, that doesn't mean I want to do the movement pattern very fast. It means that I need to slow down to the rate of their motion and rely on the fact that it's the correct choice among alternatives. And then finally, once we get it to where we can do it at the correct time, given the correct stimulus, that it's qualitatively strong enough to withstand the various forms of pressure, then we can start graduating the intensity. So we can move a little bit faster in our training. We can complexify the environment a little bit more, feeding the student more and more stimulus, among which this particular movement pattern will be the correct option in one particular circumstance, and see if we can't develop their ability to find the place and time and apply the technique correctly, given the chaos of, you know, for our cases here in swordsmanship, the free player sparring environment. So what we're looking at specifically is we're looking at moving from a strong position on the left side, or on the dominant side, outwards. So if Connor just takes his guard, so Connor right now is standing in a sort of defensory kind of a long point. But just to make sure that he's qualitatively strong, I'll just make sure that he stays strong with my sword, right? As I move my sword, he just follows, so I want him to work into this, Connor. Good, beautiful, right? So he keeps everything strong. And if I throw an action, he doesn't have to parry with the long edge. If he's a little closer, it might be a shorter action to get strung with the short edge, covering the line of the shoulder. And I just want to make sure that he can achieve that first, right? So that we want to put the basic action inside this context, kind of at least have a sense of it at the onset so that we know where we're coming from. And then once we've established that, we can start developing the actual movement pattern. So again, so my goal here is a straight thrust from a strong position after a parry with a zuken action. So let's say I start on this side, I threaten the zuken,
hit here, and Connor has moved to a strong position. He's aligned. His point, his hands, his body. If I push against his sword, it's well defended. He's able to withstand pressure going forward. If I press hard to the side, he can yield to this pressure because my action isn't threatening him. But if I'm moving forward towards him, then it stops in his pressure. Right? So once we've established this basic position, we're going to look at how we can develop the moving pattern going forward. So again, one more time. I begin on this side. I force the action this way. He's defended with the Zucken action. And from here, we saw what Connor was doing was cutting, which isn't the worst action in the world. It's often can be very effective. But there are ways that our training partner can defend against this. And so we're going to make this action a little bit more optimal. All right. So the way that we're going to do that is, before we even get started with our blade work, we need to make sure that our weight is loaded correctly. So our weight is on the balls of our feet and pressuring forward. So instead of fighting on the back foot, when I collect on this side, I want to have the weight on the balls of my feet going forward so that, so Connor does, get back to that position. So Connor gets to here, he wants to thrust. Once he has this dominant position on this side, he wants to thrust and he wants to be able to follow his sword with his body going forward. And if he's flat-footed, then he might not be able to follow this thrust through opposition, right? So instead of keeping his weight on the back foot or on his heels, he's going to collect the thrust, putting more pressure on the balls of his feet than his heels. His heels will still be touching the mat, but he's going to have more weight on the balls of his feet than his heels, right? So that's going to be the first part of the action. So just set him up, and he knows that he can go forward there, right? Beautiful, right? And we're just making sure that he's defending his hand with his cross. And in fact, we might even correct this a little bit, make this a 45, really get the arm behind the cross there, right? So one more time. So, beautiful, right? He's here, he's defended this action. Now, how are we going to develop this? So, he defends the action, and now from here, instead of cutting across this way, we're going to move up into a right ox, extending forward in a strong way. So keeping our point and our point and body structure focused against the direction of the sword, against the pressure of the sword. So as he extends his arms, he's going to turn into a right ox, and he keeps his point strong here. He can extend his arms all the way. He can actually retract this arm just a hair, just enough. There you go. So that it feels nice and strong. And the way that we're going to test the strength of this is if I push here, do you feel nice and strong? Right, so this is where you want to be. And then we can extend further. So go ahead and extend this towards the pressure, and he keeps the pressure strong the entire time. That's just to make sure that any pressure that I'm putting against his sword is going to be channeled into his cross the whole time.
How long is it?
So now extend. Good. And follow through. You can either do it with a passing step or a gather step or a lunge step. Either way is fine. So good. So the one thing there that I want to correct is his point broke, which means that if as I hit the cross, I moved my sword to the middle of his blade, I would be able to effectively deflect his thrust. All right? And so we want to make the thrust just a little bit stronger. The way that we're going to test this, I'm going to give him the same stimulus. He's going to collect. He's going to extend his arms. I'm going to withdraw my sword and put pressure on the middle the whole time. And he wants to keep his pressure strong against my force as my pressure is on the middle but towards him, and then follow through with the step. Good. Beautiful. Right? You felt the pressure the whole time in the thrust? Yeah. Oh. Do it again. Now, you stop there. You see, through his extension, his point has already guided itself past my body. So he's no longer threatening me with this thrust. Which means the only real course of action he has from here is to potentially cut around. And I know that, and so I can safely withdraw or potentially take, and then retake my offense from that position, right? So you want to keep me on this side of my body. One more time. Good. Good. So instead of breaking your wrist there, keep all of your structures nice and strong. time. Good, right. Okay, so we've worked our way up. We've developed the competency of doing the movement pattern in sequence. So we've done the subordinate components of the movement pattern, everything from the strong parry to the outside with the short edge, followed by an extension of the arms into ox in a strong way against pressure so that our thrust isn't deflected, and then followed by ballistic movement forward with either a passing step or potentially a lunge step, depending on the distance and depending on the considerations of the direction of force. Now it's time to start smoothing it out, right? So John here is going to offer the stimulus, and we'll begin with the sequence just to remind ourselves what the order of operations are. John begins with his first offensive action. 1, 2, 3. Beautiful. All right, step back a little bit, John. Yeah, and we go again. Good. Give him a little bit more pressure on the middle of the blade towards him. Sure. Good. And you can see, even with pressure, as long as the pressure is going towards Connor, Connor's able to withstand the pressure and continue his thrust forward. Now, if he was weak in the thrust, if he was being careless with where his point was, then against strong pressure, his point would drift aside. All right? So let's just demonstrate that real quick. So as you see, because he didn't orient his structure over John's sword through his extension, he was naturally pushed aside, which puts him behind in this action, right? Now, if John were to fight against this pressure by withdrawing his sword and pushing on the middle, then Connor would not be behind. He would still be deflected, but he would have an opportunity to respond because this action commits the direction of force from John towards me in this moment, right? So as John pushes me aside, Connor you can do anything you want. What would you normally do from there? What do you think?
This.
Okay, he could do that, or you could potentially zver, right? He pushes aside, he can zver, or there are various other options that Connor has at his disposal. If this is actually further out this way through your extension, and he was pushing aside, you can do clearance. And then with a step, yeah, there you go, beautiful. Right, so all of those are fair game for Connor as long as his thrust is strong. If his thrust is not strong, go ahead. So begin from the beginning. And Connor's thrust is not strong, it's deflected early. If Connor now tries to do some of those actions, John has the opportunity, because of the fueling that he has, to mitigate the next offensive action and begin his own offense, depending on when Connor decides to let go, right? You can finish your offense, right? So try to keep the action qualitatively consistent, strong in the direction of John's sword, ensuring that it requires a committed parry from John to defeat the thrust. Go again, back up a hair. Beautiful. Good. A little faster, not a lot. If that's what we're looking to achieve.
That's where you want me to
Work your way up to.
Okay, yes.
One more time. And now we've ensured that our sequence is solid. We're going to try and smooth it out by entering a kind of a flow state. So we're going to go nice and slow. We're going to operate, so that as soon as you start the action, everything fits as smoothly as possible. Go ahead. it was strong enough, but I could be wrong. Go ahead.
So I was ready to move on, and I just remembered as I was getting ready to edit this video that I should point out. At this point in the video, you'll start to see things that we had worked on already and that Connor had developed a sort of proficiency in start to break down as we move on from one step to the other. So that's a totally normal part of this process, and it's why we scale our development so carefully. When you take a movement that you're doing from doing it well in rhythm to doing it well in context, you're going to discover that little details that you were getting right, like keeping your weight on the balls of your feet or parrying with the correct edge, whatever the case may be, start to break down because it becomes more complex and you stop keeping track of the details so carefully. So that's partly why we want to spend so much time in a particular stage of this, but also it's it's an uncomfortable aspect of development that we should get comfortable with, right? If we don't feel awkward when we're developing something, then we're not optimized in terms of our learning potential. So we want to be awkward, but have a clear vision of what success looks like so we can make rapid changes to create rapid improvement, right? So when you move on from one step to the other, things are going to break down. You're going to stop doing things that you were doing perfectly. You're going to stop doing them well at all. But as long as you get comfortable in that state of discomfort, you'll move very quickly through that initial awkwardness, and you'll start to see progress. And then if you can't, then that's fine. You go back a step, and you find where the hang up is, and you just work that out until you're really, really comfortable, and then you can get to that stage. So, all right.
So again, presuming that we've gotten that where we want it, which remains to be seen if there could be more work done on this action, but we're ready to move on to the next step. So how do we fit this into a broader context? It's one thing to be able to perform a movement pattern well, qualitatively consistent, in a way such that all of the actions happen at the right time, but it's another thing to choose that movement pattern among a set of options, and then begin it, at the right time according to the option that you get, right? So we're going to start building context into the drilling sequence. It could be anything from just giving alternative kinds of pressure to the blade, or maybe focusing on distance, footwork whenever my opponent enters a certain way. That's when I do X. If he enters a different way, then I do Y. This time, we're going to start with a quick dorsiflexion drill just to make sure that our skills in the domain of dorsiflexion are strong enough. So go ahead and present your sword in the spike fencer. John's going to just put lateral pressure on Connor's sword. As soon as Connor feels it, he's going to yield to John's pressure, and then he's going to orient his structure such that he's able to take on that side. So we go again, John gives the pressure, Connor lets go. As soon as he feels it, we just go nice and slow. And let's start moving, increasing the speed a little bit. Good. Keep going. And we're a little tight here, so let's loosen up. Let's get up. 135 degrees, feeling nice and relaxed. John gives the pressure. There it is. Good. Nice, good, strong. Spark fencer. And go ahead. Keep going, John. Good. Now, John, when you're ready, you're going to integrate the skill.
Sorry?
You're going to integrate the skill into this. So you're going to continue doing your dorsiflexions until you're ready, and then you're going to perform the stimulus that compelled the thrust.
the first action we were doing.
That's right.
Gotcha.
So try and get your sword to move first. So again, we want to focus on getting the sword to move first. Your body's moving a little faster. The way that we're going to do that is that at the end of John's action, if Connor's sword doesn't move first, John's actually going to step out of distance. So now John's going to begin doing the exact same thing that he was doing before, but as a qualitative check on the strength of the thrust and the timing of the thrust, we're going to have John step out as soon as he hits the strong. So if Connor moves his sword first, he should be able to hit John. If John's able to evade this thrust, that means Connor's sword probably was the second thing to move, and it was his body that started to move first, right? Keep going, Dirk Jackson. And that time, the problem wasn't his timing. He actually got the timing correct. But the problem was that he weakened in his thrust too early. Do it one more time. A little bit better. Go ahead. I also want you to bend, put a little bit of bend in your right arm. I'm going to show you, it'll make sense in the video. So, cut here. Right, so I'm going to be bent like this.
Okay, where am I?
Your arm is extended all the way.
Okay.
Right, so one more time. Sword move first. So I have this versus. Right. That's the structure right there. You want this structure behind your sword, right? So do the one where you're straight, right? You see? So now do it again. There, right there. That's the fucking structure. That 135. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
135 will channel your shit. So any force that is applied here, it's going to go down into the arm. If you lock out the arm, if I push this way, it's going to be weak. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you're just doing
Yeah.
your instructions.
The Zukin will.
The Zukin sets him up for the.
Yep.
Okay.
Pressure's on the outside.
Yeah.
Zukin. Gotcha.
So keep going.
You want just.
Yeah, we can just
both
start from the
pressures,
beginning.
both
I'm gonna
pressures.
edit all that out. So
You want both pressures on this one?
yeah. So you're gonna do Duraflexion pressure on both sides,
Okay.
straight thrust pressure,
Yep.
and then a Zukin.
And pressure on
And
this.
then you're not gonna worry about the pressure. As soon as he Zukins, you're gonna go with your thrust. As long as you take with the strong your blade. Alright, go ahead.
Okay.
Good. Good. Try with the passing step this time. Now you're going to go a little bit slower, Jack.
Sure.
And you can open up your hips a little bit, Connor, so that your right hip opens outward and back as you finish this passing step. So you're, okay. That's it, right there. Did you feel strong in that press the whole way? It looked like you might have not have been strong enough. I just couldn't tell.
There wasn't enough pressure for me. No.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, and you know what that means, John.
Yeah. Well, gotcha.
And now go a little bit faster.
Good.
That's it. Yes. Stop there.